So we're going to be going over what clean URLs are and how to implement them in Next.js using a library called Next Routes. Now before we do, a quick announcement. Tomorrow I'm going to be doing another compile time session where I'll be live streaming on Twitch and peer programming or pair programming with you guys. So if you're interested, tomorrow, February 2nd at 10 a.m. Central Time, I'm going to be coding with people on a first come, first serve basis. So if you're interested, that'll be happening tomorrow. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So to start off, we're going to just look at what a clean URL is. So basically, we want a way to pass in variables or parameters in the URL and render different content. Now, one way to do this, and this is one way that is built into Next.js, is we can add URL parameters like this. So we say a question mark, and then our variable is called token, and then the value is that. And this is basically some random ID, right? So the idea is with a clean URL is you get rid of this kind of question mark and this it's kind of ugly and can get kind of long sometimes. So you can clean that up a little bit, and this is a much nicer looking URL. So you say user/confirm/ and then you just have your parameter at the end here. So that's the goal of what we're going to do in Next.js today, is how to create a URL that looks like this, and then how to actually use this parameter or value in our code. All right, so to do that, surprisingly, this is not actually built into Next.js, at least not easily to be able to do it. A library called Next Routes makes this pretty easy to do. Now there is a couple examples in the Next example repo that you can take a look at to kind of get an idea of this. The first is we're going to have to create our own custom server to be able to change how routing works. And then we're also going to have to look at the next route example, which I've kind of already merged in a project to get working with TypeScript. So we're going to start there. So I'm going to link this below, but basically the first thing we have to do is create a custom server. And so the code for this is going to be on GitHub, and I'll link this. And so what this is a TypeScript server that's basically going to server-side render our stuff. And basically all we do is we import Next, and we tell Next to do stuff for us, basically handle the whole process. And then what we do is we just create like this custom handle function, which comes from routes, and that's where we input Next routes. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this code right here, and I'm going to create a server folder and an index.js in there, or .ts I mean. So I'm going to say new file, and I'm going to say server.index.ts. And I'm just going to paste this in here. And then we're going to need a routes file, routes.ts, and I'm going to come over to the server routes and copy paste that. Okay, so we need to install Next Routes. So I'm going to say yarn add Next Routes, and we also need to install the types for it. But this is how I've been able to get it to work with TypeScript. You'll notice I have to ignore it here because there's kind of a problem with the library. Looks like it works. For some reason, I thought I had to download the types for Next Routes, but maybe I don't have to. Yeah, it looks like it comes with it. All right, so this is how we actually create a route with Next Routes to get it to do what we were looking at before. So first here, we actually give the name of the file in our pages over here. So I'm going to create one called confirm.ts or .tsx, and I'm going to be using this to confirm users after they have registered their account. Okay, so here I'm going to call it confirm. And then here we give it the path. So we're going to say user/confirm/ and then we're going to say colon and then our name of our variable, if you will. So I'm going to call my variable token, and you put a colon in front of it. So this is going to take any arbitrary value and it's going to store it in a variable called token for us, which we'll be able to use. So that is pretty much the setup for the custom server. The only other thing is now to start our custom server. We cannot come over here and just call the dev script in our package.json. We need to start up the server ourselves, which usually means installing tsnode. And we're also going to be using tsnode dev to make sure that it's restarting. Now, some people have some trouble getting TS Node Dev to work. If that's you, then you can use NodeMon or NodeDaemon to get that working as well. All right, so now that I installed that, basically what we're going to do here is we're going to say TS Node, and we're going to say server.index.ts. So this is what was going to happen before we do anything special with the TS Node Dev. This is just going to start up the server. Now there's one current problem that we have, and I'm just going to get rid of this yarn error log. We don't need that. And we have a single tsconfig.json file. This works nicely for the React code that we're writing over here, right, in our Next.js project, but it does not meld well with the server code that we're writing over here. So what we have to do is actually create a new tsconfig for this. So usually I call it tsconfig.server.json, and then I'm just going to take the tsconfig that I'm using over here. So we'll go to web, tsconfig server, and I'll copy this. So notice I'm actually just importing the tsconfig that we're using in React, and then I'm overriding the things that break in it. For example, module, and we could probably use allow synthetic. I don't think that'll cause a problem, though I am importing it like this, so maybe it will. I'm going to leave it for now, just so it doesn't break. Okay, so here's our server JSON, and basically we need to start our server and tell TS Node to use this tsconfig and not to use the default tsconfig. So in my package.json, I have that as well. So here we'd use -- project. And with TS Node Dev, we're going to use the respawn command, but we're going to add that in a second. All right, so back to package.json. We'll paste this in here. And I'm just going to say yarn dev. And in my confirm over here, I'm just going to say export default, and I'm going to say hi. All right, so we get the compile that worked correctly. So now if I come over here and I go to localhost and I go to /user/confirm, and then for example, here is a token we could do, you notice we see hi. So it indeed rendered our page. Now the next step is we pretty much are done setting up our custom server here. The only thing is every time we want a new route with variables in it like this, we can come over here to this page and we can say routes.add. Now the other thing is you'll notice we are exporting the routes, router, and the link up here. The reason for that is whenever we want to programmatically come to this page, we're going to need to use the router and the link instead of the one that comes from Next.js. But we'll see this probably in a future video when we actually need to push to one of these pages. We are not going to look at it in this video. And it's also in the docs for Next routes as well, how to use this. Okay, so this is our custom server. We can pretty much just leave it now. The next thing is in our confirm, we want to be able to get this variable into our code and be able to use it. So for us to be able to do that, I'm going to say React. And this is basically just a little template that I have, but we're going to say a React component here. So I'm going to call it confirm and make sure to export default it. And then here, and I don't think we have to import. Okay, we are importing React. I couldn't remember if we were importing React. It looks like we are in each file. I couldn't remember if you need to do that in Next.js or not. All right, so our confirm here, I'm going to say hi again. And then up here, I'm going to say get initial props. And I like to just create the function like this. And then here, you can just do props, or you could say values. We could cast it to anything, and we can just log what is inside of this function. So this is a special Next.js function that gets called before the page renders. And I guess actually, since this is server-side rendering, we'll see the log over here as opposed to over here, I believe. So if we put the console here, run this. Oh, you know what? I forgot to add TS Node Dev, so I need to restart it myself. So I don't want to have to Control C and restart this every time. So that's why I installed TS Node Dev to do that for me. But let's see. It says hi, and we're not seeing this value here, but let's just TS Node Dev real quick before I forget, and then we'll see what's going on with this. And I'm going to say respawn. So now every time we make changes to the file, hopefully it should restart. All right, so we have this, and now we're gonna hit enter. Still not seeing anything. Oh, you know what? Maybe I spelled this wrong. I think we did it in our lib. Maybe with Apollo. Yep, get initial props. I need to make it async. That's what I was doing wrong. So static. And I guess I can just do it like this. It feels weird to just like assign it like that when it's static. I don't know why. All right, refresh. Should resolve to an object but found undefined. So as it says right there, we are returning undefined here, and it's expecting us to return an object. So we can just return an object like that, and it won't be mad at us anymore. All right, so refresh, you'll notice nothing's in the console here, and we see hi just there. Reason for that is when the page first renders, it's going to be rendering on the server. So this log is going to be rendered on the server. So you're going to see it here. So here's what we have access to. So you'll notice we have a error, we have a request, we have a response object we can use. We have a path name, and this is the thing that we care about, the query. We can see a token, and here's our variable. So I can say query, and then we can get the token from it. Now the type of this is actually not any. I believe it's called next context. Yep. So this is the correct type. If we click on it, we can see the type of it, and you'll see it has all these things that we are kind of seeing there. All right, so this token is what I'm going to return here. And whenever we return whatever we return from get initial props, we have access to that prop in our render. So console.log of this.props. All right, now refresh the page. You'll notice we have a token here. So it's rendered on the server and also on the client side. So that's why we see the console log both, or it's rendering in both places, I guess you would say. All right, so now that we have access to this token in our render, which we got from the URL, we can use this however we want. Now, the way we're going to use it is we're going to use it to call a mutation. The mutation is going to be a confirm user mutation. So this is after we register a user. So let's register a user real quick. Before they can log in, they need to register their account. So Bob, and I probably use Bob, so I'm gonna say Bob12. We're gonna submit. So this is a valid user. I'm not really displaying much here, but if I go to my server logs, I'll be able to click on this link, and it'll take me to the email. And now you'll notice this is gonna take me to localhost 3000. We're going to see hi here. Now, instead of saying hi, what I wanted to do is I wanted to confirm the user, and then I want to take them to the login page, for example, so they can then log in. All right, so that's what we're going to be implementing. So to do that, we're going to be calling that login mutation that I showed you. So I'm going to create a new one here, which I'm going to say confirm user .ts export const confirm user mutation. And I already wrote this out, so we're just calling the confirm user mutation. I called it confirm user with a capital C, and then we have a single variable, which is a token that we get from the URL, which we're going to pass in. All right, so import from that Apollo boost. And usual stuff that we have to do here. So we added a mutation, so that means we have to generate. Come back over here, yarn generate. Also, one thing that just struck me as I was coding this, unrelated, I don't know if TS Node Dev will actually restart because it's not watching. I don't know if it's watching these files over here. We might have to switch to Node Daemon. Anyway, that thought just struck me. We'll see if it works or not. Okay, so confirm user, we just created the types for. It generated the component for us over here, I believe. Confirm user. So perfect. So we're now going to be able to call this. So in our confirm over here, and again, one other thing that we have access to in our next context. So sometimes we want to use these query parameters in the render function. Here we actually don't. So like here, I'm just going to say null, and I actually don't even need to return this. But that you can if you need it. For us, we're actually just going to call the mutation right here. And the way we're going to call the mutation is by using the Apollo client. So we're going to say Apollo client. Now, it says the type definition, it does not exist on here, which it usually doesn't. But in our with Apollo over here, you'll notice what happened is they set the context, they set it to Apollo client. So we actually have access to that. And I don't know if it's context like that and then we get Apollo client. I think we can access Apollo client just like that. So what I'll usually do to get this type happy with us is I'll create my own context. So I'll say my context .ts, or we could call it the Apollo context, although that sounds too official. So I'm going to say Apollo context, or my context. And we're going to say interface my context extends the next context. And then we're just going to replace we're going to add a field called the Apollo client. And if I come back over here, we can get the exact type definition for it. Oh, it says any. There we go. And we'll paste this in here. All right, and then we're just going to export. So now back to our conform, you can say my context here, and now it's happy with us. All right, so I'm going to say Apollo client dot mutate. Now here, all right, we'll do it like that. We're going to wait. So let's make this async. Now here, since I'm just calling this mutation like this, we're not going to be using the generated component for us, but we can use the type that's generated. So if I hover over this, you'll notice I believe we can pass in, yes, we can pass in right here a generic. So I'm going to say confirm user. I think we want the confirm user mutation and then the variables associated with it. So now when I say variables, it's going to know we need to pass in a token, which we get from the URL right there. All right, so I did something wrong. Tokens are incompatible. String or string is undefined. Oh, what's the value of this? Okay, so token is equal to token. So first off, if we don't get a token for some reasons, we want to just return. So I'm gonna say if not token, we're gonna return like that. And I guess we'll do nothing, and we'll show them just a blank screen like something went wrong. So I guess we can say something went wrong. Otherwise, we should be able to pass the token in, and the token should be of the type string. Can I just cast it to anything? Oh, I need to pass in the variable. So let me do that. Is it still unhappy with me? Oh, okay, so it's just telling us now that we have to pass in the mutation that we want. So mutation, and then the mutation we want is just the confirm user mutation, which we did over here. So we can just copy that. And let's import that. Cool. So now after it mutates, assuming it's successful and doesn't like crash out or something, we want to redirect the user. Now redirect is something we actually created a couple videos ago, and this is what it looks like again. So basically it just checks if we're on the server, it does this to redirect, otherwise it redirects using the router from Next. So this is what I was talking about. Instead of using the Next router, if we go to a page that has a variable in it, we're going to need to use the other router which we created, the one in our server. But this is going to work just fine. So we're going to pass in the context, which we're going to say ... context is this guy up here. And then the target, where do we want to go? We're going to go to /login after this. So this is definitely not going to work for us because we don't actually have a login page. Should take us to a 404 afterwards. Oops. So back to our stuff over here. Let's click on this URL now. So what should happen when I click on this is it should confirm, and then it should redirect me to the login page. And it should happen on the server, so I think what we should see is just a login page or a 404 page. So we click on it. Okay. Yarn dev. I have no idea what just happened to it. Okay, so that's up. Back here. Click on it again. And we should go straight to 404, straight to login. Cool. So we didn't even see it like flicker because it all happened on the server, which is pretty neat. See channel closed. I don't think that causes us any problem. And I think the mutation worked to confirm the user. Now we could actually check the database, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. In the next video, we'll actually create the login and to confirm, to make sure this confirm user is working. But anyway, that gives you an idea of how you can create clean URLs, get the query variable or get that parameter that we passed in your code, and then use it to do stuff. In our case, we use that variable that's being passed in to confirm the users or confirm that user, and then we redirect them to log in afterwards. So that's it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching.